Thank God it's Monday. I'm Krista from the Gritty Glitter Badger podcast. Welcome back for your Monday morning quickie. Well, happy Monday to all my fiery, big-hearted badgers out there. Get your cup of coffee if you don't have it, your water, whatever it is, and that tiny spark of self-respect that you keep misplacing under everyone else's needs. Today, I'm talking about a quote that should honestly come with a warning label because it hits like truth wrapped in barbed wire. And it really made me take pause and, reflect and think about this one a little bit more when I was actually writing out my Monday podcast for today. Don't set yourself on fire to keep others warm. And if you felt that in your chest, good. I'm glad that you did. That is the whole point. I want it to resonate with you. I want it to hit. And that's the part of you that is quite honestly exhausted from being everyone else's emotional space heater. Now, look, I'm not telling you to not be available to people. What I'm saying is to take pause and to not be emotionally, mentally, physically, whatever it is, available 24/7 out of obligation, whatever it is, because it's the part of you that you are giving has actually been running on fumes while still handing out warmth like you're just an inexhaustible bonfire. But that's not the truth. That's the part of you that knows deep down you have been burning both ends and you're calling it being supportive or being reliable or being strong or, it's obligatory or it comes from emotional manipulation on their part or your part for whatever reason that might be, or it's the classic, I'm fine, it's fine, I've got it, which I actually just did an entire podcast on the quote unquote, I'm fine syndrome. And here's the truth bomb we need to detonate right now. No, you don't. You don't have to be that, and you shouldn't, and you're not supposed to. And this isn't a call out. This is a call back to yourself because somewhere along the way, you learned that your worth was measured by your usefulness and that your value is only tied to how much that you can give, fix, carry, absorb, sacrifice, whatever that is. And again, I'm not saying it's not to ever serve or help people, okay? There's a difference between serving people, helping people, being there for people, and then just giving your entire self away 24/7, and that being needed was the same thing as being loved. Like you putting yourself out there, that meant that was love. Oh, I'm doing all these things, then it's the same thing as being loved. Maybe it started in childhood when you realized that being the easy kid meant less conflict. You just, oh, they're just so easy and they never resist anything and they're always doing what they should be doing. Maybe it was crystallized in your 20s when you discovered that being indispensable meant job security, even though you hated the job that you were in, or whatever it looks like, right? Maybe it's solidified in relationships where your capacity to endure became mistaken for your capacity to love. But here's the truth that you might not want to hear, but quite honestly, you absolutely need to hear. Self-sacrifice is not a personality trait. And this whole, culture around giving out awards and, applauding people for martyr syndrome and just even quite honestly, victim mentality, it's literally just a survival strategy, but you outgrew this years ago. You didn't know that you did, or you don't know how to move beyond it. And it's the psychological of equivalent of still wearing your high school Letterman jacket to board meetings. Outdated, uncomfortable and it's holding you back from who you were meant to become. And it's time to stop burning. And I'm talking about burning out. So I want to I want to be honest about the psychology of why you keep lighting that match, why you are everybody else's bonfire, and you're just one freaking huge, ginormous dumpster fire of all the shit, and not in a good sense. You're not setting yourself on fire because you're weak, okay? You're doing it because your nervous system has been trained to equate self-abandonment with safety. And you learned, early on that harmony was earned. It wasn't given, right? That being easy, that helpful, low maintenance. That's another huge one that comes up that I hear a lot. Low maintenance, or the strong one, kept the peace. But neuroscience tells a different story. And studies from the University of Toronto show that chronic people pleasing activities or activates the chronic people pleasing activities, because I honestly, quite truthfully, I feel like some people treat it as if it is a sport, right? It activates the same stress circuits as physical danger. So your brain is literally interpreting disappointing others as a threat. So when you say, yes, while your actual your gut, your intuition is screaming no, you're not being nice. You're being hijacked by outdated wiring. And your amygdala, it's throwing this full blown fire drill every time you even think about, setting a boundary, because 20 years ago keeping everyone happy meant emotional survival for you and not rocking the boat for anybody around you. And here's the kicker. And this should make you put, and I hate shoulds. My goal is to make you put down that metaphorical match. Okay. Burnout isn't caused by doing too much. It's caused by doing too much for others and not enough for yourself. And again, I'm not talking about never doing anything for people or not, being of service. Okay. It's caused by doing too much for others and not enough for yourself. You're not tired because you're incapable. You're tired because you've overextended yourself. You're overgiving, you're overfunctioning, and you're perpetually over there instead of over here. And you're tired because you've become the firewood in everybody else's warmth equation. And that wood that you my badgers out there, eventually it's going to turn into ash. So I want to give you some science, because you know how much I geek out and nerd out on science, but I also like to back my claims up by doing the research and reading articles and things like that to have more information behind it. Your brain needs evidence to override decades of conditioning. So chronic self-sacrifice, it spikes cortisol, it drains dopamine, and it tanks your ability to regulate your emotions. And there was a study from the University of California that found that women who consistently prioritize others over themselves, they show a 40% reduction in stress resilience and a 30% increase in inflammatory markers. And that's not just numbers that are on a page. That's what I've talked about before. Your body is keeping receipts of every time you said yes when you meant no. Every time you showed up when you needed rest, when you did things out of, obligation instead of really truly wanting to do it. Every time you gave from empty instead of overflow. And your mitochondria are literally exhausted from having to produce so much energy for everyone else's life. Meanwhile, yours is still sitting in the waiting room. So the translation is your body is keeping score. It's keeping receipts. They are filed away, and it knows every single, purchase that you made. And you can't outrun biology. You can't out hustle depletion. You can't. And you can't out positive think your way out of chronic self abandonment. Your body is eventually going to do what your boundaries won't. It is going to force you into bed with an illness. It's going to slam you into a wall of exhaustion, or and for lack of a better phrase, manifest that eye twitch. Have you ever had an eye twitch in stressful situations? My eye gets switchy sometimes, right? That's not just like some weird mistaken happenstance type of thing. That becomes a new twitch or body or personality trait, if you will. And your nervous system doesn't care about your good intentions, it cares about survival. And, right now, it's sending you smoke signals that you're about to burn out completely. And I want to get raw for a real second. I want to get raw for a second about the real reason that, perhaps you may be afraid to stop burning, to stop, constantly just giving. You're not afraid people will be cold without you. You are afraid they'll be fine without you, perhaps. Or you're afraid that, you're going to get, kickback because you do it, or people are going to tell you, well, I'm disappointed in you, I needed you, or they're just going to do whatever it is. There's going to be some kind of a repercussion, right? You're afraid that if you stop overgiving, overperforming, overcompensating, over functioning, people will be upset with you, or there may be they will stop needing you, and if they stop needing you, then who are you? Right? This fear runs deeper than logic most times. It's wired into our identity specifically. And I can, I'm a woman, so I can only speak, as a woman, and, what it is like for us and what we are entrained to believe from a young age. But our sense of belonging and our definition of love itself is tied to the mere premise that we are there for everybody else. We are there to do for everybody else and hold everything together. And, most of many women, most of us, and, men, I'm sure the men have their own, things that they are tied to as well. But, it's like our entire life is based around this very thing. And it's very hard to, when it's been conditioned into us, we built an entire life on the foundation of being indispensable, and then there's this thought of, people discovering that they can manage without us. It could feel like existential abandonment, or if they get pissed at us because we aren't, catering to them like we used to, that could actually make us feel even more, abandonment, like we've let people down. And there's a whole ricochet of emotions that can go with it. But here's the truth, okay? If someone only values you when you're burning, they don't value you. They value the heat. They value what it is you are doing for them, not actually you. They're not in love with you, with your soul. They're in love with your service, okay? They're not connected to your essence. They are addicted to your energy. And there are people who seek other people out, again, the energy vampires, because they want to be around that energy. They need that person's energy. And you deserve relationships where your presence is enough, not your labor, not your emotional bandwidth, not your constant availability. Just you as you are, the messy, boundary having, sometimes saying no, fully human, fucking chaotic at moments, like holy shit, all over the place, effervescence, charismatic, positive, low, high, whatever, that human version of you is, you should be able to exist beyond utility. And there's, this one, I want to, you're not a fireplace, okay? You're not a furnace for somebody. You are not an emergency generator that it kicks on when everyone else's power goes out. You're not a backup plan, a safety net, or some emotional airbag for other people's poor planning and unprocessed trauma. You are a human being with your own limits, your own needs, your own desires. And yes, a nervous system that is begging you to stop playing martyr and start playing main character in your own life, okay? And You cannot build a powerful life on ashes of your own well-being. You cannot grow if you are constantly extinguishing yourself for other people. And you cannot rise if you're always kneeling at the altar of everybody else's comfort. You know, it's like, do you want a better life? It's like asking yourself, do I want a better life? Well, of course we all do. Who would say no? I can't even fathom that somebody would be like, no, I don't want a better life. You know, so stop burning yourself to fuel someone else's comfort. Stop treating your energy like it's some renewable resource when you know damn well that you haven't charged and, recharged properly in years, not to mention your time, that, return of investment, you're not getting that shit back. The energy that you have given to somebody, that you have you, whatever it is, that time, you don't get that back. And stop mistaking self-destruction for love. And then you're calling exhaustion a badge of honor that you want an Olympic gold medal for. Like, you just to wear, just, oh, look at me, look what I do, right? That to me is not a good look, okay? So before we get into my hot badger tips for this week, I want to talk about why I'm asking you to journal this with an actual pen and paper, because I say it every week, not your notes app, not a voice text, not a Google Doc. Okay. There is legitimate hard science behind this old school approach, which actually now, quite honestly, it's an art form. Then it is quickly becoming such a rare thing. And, you know, writing actual pen to paper, your transformation depends on it. So writing by hand activities, what it does is it activates the reticular activating system, the RAS. And this is the part of your brain that is responsible for filtering information and deciding what matters. So when you write something down, okay, physically touching the pen to the paper, you're feeling it. You're slowing down because you're writing it. You can feel the words on the paper, right? When you touch the paper, there's a whole thing that is happening. Your brain, it tags it as important, and it becomes encoded more deeply, and it's processed more thoroughly, and you remember it more accurately. And the physical act of forming letters with your hands creates neural pathways that typing can simply not replicate. And a Princeton study found that handwriting increases conceptual understanding and emotional integration far more than typing. And why is that? Because writing actually slows you down. It forces presence and it creates embodiment, and it makes the truth harder to dodge. So when your hand moves across paper, you can't delete the uncomfortable realizations or backspace through the patterns you'd rather not see. And even if you use whiteout or you cross something out, you still know that the shit was still there, right? And typing is fast and forgettable. Writing is honest and it's indelible. And when you're confronting your own patterns of self abandonment or whatever it is, honestly, the only way to do this is through pen to paper. And the kinesthetic experience of pen on paper literally is rewiring your relationship with truth. And it moves from your head to your hand, from thought to reality, and from maybe to must. So, that kinesthetic experience engages your sensory memory, and it's creating what neuroscientists call embodied cognition. And your body remembers what your mind might conveniently forget. So that slight ache in your hand after writing 3 pages, that's your physical self participating in your psychological breakthrough, right? And that's your whole being saying, yes, we're doing this and we're changing this and we're done burning. And here's an interesting thing. I just finished doing this 7-day challenge in a fantastic personal excellence group that I am in with a bunch of high achieving, personally excellent individuals. But anyway, the challenge was every day for 20 minutes in silence, no distractions. I had to write with my non-dominant hand. So I am dominantly right-handed. And so I was writing with my left hand, and I did this for 7 days. And I actually did the text from a book called Tough by Greg Everett, which is a fantastic book. If you've never read it, I highly recommend it. But so for 7 days, 20 minutes, I would, write out a text from this book. And I would tell you, everything that I wrote out those 7 days, I can remember like crazy. More so than if I was writing with my right hand, because I was so focused and so present on using my non-dominant hand to write the words. I actually absorbed what I was writing so much more. It was the coolest thing ever to do. And I actually want to continue doing it because just taking the time, going through the discomfort of like, how do I hold a pen in my other hand? Some pens work better than others. The spiral in the middle of the notebook when you're writing with your left hand is fucking annoying. I'm going to say that right there. So, lefties, I totally feel you on that. But that was a really cool experiment, and I digress. And so now go grab your pen, grab your paper, and let's get into the transformation work with 3 hot badger tips that are going to revolutionize how you show up in the world. Okay, so hot badger tip number 1, identify your fire starters. Okay, so journal on this. And if you are not in a place right now where you can write these down, come back to this, take 10 minutes out of your day, not distracted, and go through this. Okay, so where am I giving more than I can afford and why? And don't just stop at the surface answer. So when you write, let's say, for example, I always host family dinners, dig deeply. Why? What happens in your body when you imagine not hosting? Okay. Whether it's holidays, you always host holiday dinners or whatever it is. Okay. And what story do you tell yourself about who you'd be if you stopped? And what fear lives underneath the compulsion? So, excuse me, I want you to write until you hit the uncomfortable truth, right? And you'll know when you feel it. It could be that, again, remember I talked about in another podcast, feeling it in your body, the sensations, it's going to hit you. It could be you feel it in your stomach or your jaws clench or, maybe your shoulders tighten, whatever it is, you'll know it when you feel it. Okay. And that's the one that matters. And that's where the transformation lives. So keep writing until you find the original wound that taught you that love required you to light yourself on fire. Name it, see it, thank it for trying to protect you, because literally when we pare it down, that is literally what your body is trying to do. They are just trying to keep you safe. And then tell it that you found a better way to quote unquote stay warm. So, hot badger tip number 2, practice the 10-second boundary. So, before you say yes to anything, and I mean anything, from taking on maybe it's extra work where at your job to attending the event that you're dreading, just pause for 10 seconds, count them literally. And I'm talking the old school way of counting: 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi, okay, all the way to 10. Do it in your head. And if you want to do it out loud, you can. I don't care. And then in that pause, ask yourself, if you say yes to this, what am I saying no to? So write down every single answer, you know, for every single time, for 1 week, like every time it comes up, just write that down. And you're going to see patterns that are going to begin to emerge. And, that's the interesting thing, because these patterns are just going to show up. They always do. And you're going to start seeing that saying yes to organizing the office party means saying no to your Tuesday evening yoga class. And the yoga class is the thing that you want the most. That's what is something that keeps you grounded in your week. Saying yes to your friend's crisis at, crisis called 11 p.m. means saying no to the sleep your body desperately needs when your friend is always in the middle of, some crisis, and they are constantly living in drama and victim mentality. So saying yes to being on that committee, maybe that means saying no to Sunday mornings with your coffee and your thoughts. Is that what you want? So this 10-second pause isn't about thinking, it's about feeling into the true cost of your yes. Trust me, like I said, your body knows, and your writing will reveal it. Your patterns are, when you do this, the goal is that your patterns are going to teach you everything that you need to know about where you've been trading your well-being for that approval. So hot badger tip number 3, create a quote unquote warm without burning list. And what do I mean by that? I mean list 5 ways that you can support others without sacrificing yourself. And this isn't about becoming cold or unavailable or just, I'm like literally just moving off to, some, deserted place up in the middle of Antarctica away from everybody and becoming a hermit 10 feet under the snow. That's not what I'm talking about. It's about finding sustainable ways to show up. It could be things like offering encouragement instead of solutions, because sometimes people just need witness, not to be rescued. Setting time limits, okay? I have 15 minutes to chat, then I need to get back to my day you know, or it could look like delegating. Have you asked Sarah? She's amazing at this, or saying, I can help, but not today. And these are revolutionary ideas. I know. I mean, who would have thought, right? And, the fact that choosing presence over performance, being fully there for 20 minutes instead of half there or disassociated for 2 hours. Okay. But here's an advanced move. So the next to each strategy, okay, I want you to write what preserves you. So time limits preserve your energy for creative work, right? And delegating, maybe delegating preserves your role as a supporter, not the savior. And then boundaries preserve your capacity to show up when it really matters. And this list becomes a new operating system for you, and it's a guide for navigating requests without constantly defaulting to self-immolation. All right. So post it where you'll see it. That's another thing. Like when you see it, it's more it's in your face constantly, right? And it's reminding you that you can have warmth without burning, right? It's possible and it's powerful. And another thing, there's this really beautiful part that makes all of this boundary work worth it. When you stop setting yourself on fire, you don't become cold. You become sustainable, okay? And you become steady and you're grounded and you're more powerful. And you're also somebody who gives from overflow, not from depletion, right? Because you're somebody that your presence is a gift and it's not a given. And I think that's one thing that is mistaken in our culture. Presence is just something that is just, we just give it away. But that's not, it's it's a blessing and it should be treated as such. And, when you become somebody who models what healthy love looks like, other people see that, and then that love doesn't require anyone to burn. And you can also show other people how to do it, right? A lot of people tend to follow what they see, mirroring. And the people who truly love you, they're going to adjust and they're going to respect it. And also, again, like I said, they'll rise to meet you at this new level of relationship where everyone's warmth matters equally. And then it also gives them silent permission to tend to their own fires. And then you'll find yourself in relationships of mutual support instead of endless extraction, right? And then again, the ones who don't adjust or who have tantrums, because you are instilling boundaries, they were never really there for you anyway, and their departure isn't a loss, or they're not seeing them as much is it's not a loss, it's clarity and it's space, and it's also freedom. You see, when you stop being everyone else's emergency heat source, something magical happens. You discover your own internal fire, your own internal flame. And the one that's been flickering beneath all that performance and people pleasing. And you realize that you were never meant to be consumed. You were meant to, illuminate and to enhance, encourage, and support. And you were meant to create your own warmth, tend your own fire, and invite others to sit beside you as equals, each bringing their own light to the gathering. And to all my fantastically epic badgers out there, we were never meant to be anybody's firewood. You were meant to be the whole damn bonfire, wild, feral, untamed, and burning for your own joy. So don't just go through life, grow through life.